I think the scene's way healthier now than it was back in the 90s. There was a definite elitist vibe. I mean, and even with bands in the scene, because everybody I knew was sort of superficial in a way. Like, you had to look the part, you had to dress the part. And if you didn't know every band in the genre, you were a poser. Style over substance. Because there was a lot of that back in the 90s too. There were a lot of bands that was completely style over substance. And so that was another reason why it was like, please don't lump us in with that.
You are listening to Cemetery Confessions, the world's #1 goth talk podcast.
All right, hello and welcome back to Cemetery Confessions. This week, I'm very excited to be sitting down with our guest, Tara Vanflower. You may know Tara as the vocalist for Lycia. She first appeared on the album The Burning Circle and then Dust in 1995, as released by Project Records. Tara's also an incredibly prolific author, including most recently among her works the Violet series, which features a story revolving around the lust and violence of the undead, something we're all a fan of here at Cemetery Confessions. She's also published a number of poetry and short story books and a variety of fiction novels as well, all of which I will have links to in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. As always, I am the Count, and I'm here with my co-host, Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hello there.
And Tara, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I like to always start these off by getting kind of your origin story, your background, I guess, and let us know how you initially started to get interested in music, what kind of drew you into alternative culture, and where it kind of went from there for you.
So back in the late 80s, I really didn't listen to music as like an interest. It was just kind of background noise, you know. Being a teenager, it was like whatever was on the radio, etc. My parents listened to country music. So I grew up listening to that old country western and like Southern gospel and like bluegrass. We went to bluegrass festivals and all that kind of stuff. I love it too. I really do. And so I really wasn't like, I didn't care about music. And then my cousin Karen sent me a Circle Jerks cassette that she had dubbed. And I was just like, okay, this is so cool. Like, I thought it was so cool, you know? Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the first step. And then, you know, at the time, like, I was becoming friends with people who were like fans of Depeche Mode. Mm-hmm. And so it was super casual though. Like, I wasn't like obsessed about it. And then Love Song by The Cure came out. And I literally fell obsessively in love with Robert Smith. And so for quite a while, it was mostly just being obsessed with Robert Smith and Disintegration in particular. Yeah. I grew up in rural Ohio, so there wasn't access to like really good record stores. And, you know, of course, there was no internet. Finding even a magazine that had any kind of underground music or anything was next to impossible. Mm-hmm. But there were a lot of like teen club nights. And so we would go to this place called the Akron Agora, and we would go to this place called Photon, and the DJs just happened to play, like they would pepper in cool stuff. And so you would, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so you would hear like something and you're like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then you would start talking to the DJs and kind of find out, you know, what's cool and what's not cool. And you met kids from like over in Akron and Cleveland who had access to cooler stuff. And, you know, some of them probably had like older siblings and whatever. So slowly you start building this bank of bands that you were cool with, you know? And at the time, like 120 minutes, we would stay up late and watch that. And I think I worked at this amusement park, and like the first thing I bought with my first paycheck was a tape deck for my car. And I think the first cassette I bought was something by The Fall, and which was such a random pick now that I think about it. But so you just kind of slowly built this knowledge base, and then you met people from other places, and I know that I knew goth was going to be a topic here, so I've been kind of thinking about like my evolution of how was it back then, and how did it come about and everything. And nobody called it goth like where I lived. We all kind of just hung out together. Some of my friends were metalheads, some of them were punks, some of them were skaters, some of them were like listening to the Smiths and that kind of stuff. And it wasn't like nobody talked about goth ever. And so when I met my first quote unquote goth, and he was true goth, it was like, who is this alien being? He looked like he was, from Bauhaus. So you're like, oh my God. And of course he was from Cleveland. So he had access to things we didn't have access to in rural Ohio. But it was just none of us called ourselves anything, because we all just kind of hung out together, and it was like you were alternative. That was the thing. You were into alternative music. So this whole like kind of goth thing that's so prevalent, I guess now, is like almost like a retrofit thing,
Right. Yeah, there was I've heard that from many people. We've done a few episodes on, goths that are old, and they're, I don't want to say older, but in their 40s, 50s, and so on. Yeah. And there is a similar sentiment that it was more, especially because it was more dangerous to be weird. It was for like, sure, we've all got weird hair, right, and so we're just going to stick together, kind of thing.
Exactly. And like the metal kids were picked on just as bad as the skater kids, just as bad as the, girls that wore cardigans and penny loafers and tights. I mean, was sort of the look I had. That's, but we all sort of stuck together because we were targets.
Yeah. So I guess, and I mentioned off air, but you put out this really interesting goth tag video a while ago, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But, you brought up the sort of the cultural identification thing there about being alternative or being goth or metalhead or whatever. Yeah. What is it like, I guess, today that, I mean, are you comfortable with alternative as an umbrella term? What is it that kind of puts you off more specific labels?
First of all, I feel like I'm such a be who you are and don't worry about it kind of a person that labeling yourself at all to me seems odd. It seems too constrictive or something. Like, to me, I'm just like, you do you, be yourself. Who cares what you call it? I don't need like a label to feel comfortable with myself. I never have. And so it's like odd to me that people are so obsessive about defining things. I guess I get it to a degree, because people, especially for younger people, because I feel like when you're young, you're like, you need everybody to know I'm not part of the group. I'm part of this group over here, and we don't belong with you guys. I get that from a younger person's perspective, but I think the thing that's off-putting to me is that when somebody who wants to define themselves tries to put their definition onto you, and you're like, but wait, I'm not really, first of all, I don't care. And secondly, your rules don't apply to me. Like, so stop trying, And I mean, we faced that a lot in the 90s when we toured, because the label was marketing you a specific way. And, your tours you were going and playing in clubs that were geared towards specific scenes. And then you show up and you're like, Mike literally looked like he could be in Lynyrd Skynyrd, Yeah. and so it was just, it was different because, I mean, there was definitely, I've got lots of stories about circumstances where people would look at us like, why the hell are you here? And like, dude, you just paid to see me. Like, you know what I mean? There's lots of weird stories like that. But so that's where I kind of get irritated when people try to put their thing on me, because I don't have to live by your rules. I can listen to bluegrass today and then Bauhaus tomorrow, or even 2 minutes apart, and I don't care. So
So let's talk about first the kind of the rules thing, because I do see that as a problem, especially with younger people today,
Yeah.
because they do feel like they're trying to find themselves, and it's like, well, I can only do these things.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
to me, that's a serious problem, and it's something I do try to, because I consider myself a goth, and it's easy, it's useful as a sort of, hey, I you can assume that I have these specific interests,
Right,
but
right, right.
to then, when people then say, you can't listen to Dolly Parton or bluegrass or whatever,
Right.
because you're goth, that's absolutely ridiculous to me, and I absolutely fight against that, because those are the most boring people, if in any group, any
Right.
kind of goth or whatever, if you only have a singular focus, I probably am going to run out of stuff to talk about with you pretty quickly.
That and the obsession with a particular look. Like you have to
Mm.
have a specific look.
Hmm.
Like one of the things I found like super intriguing when I met Mike was because he wrote this music that was really dark and, you know, depth, had a lot of depth to it and this and that. And then I met him and he looked completely normal, which was weird to me because everybody I knew was super visual. And then, not knowing, because back then you didn't have really good access to what bands looked like and stuff. And so you would assume like you'd have this picture in your head that this person must be like hardcore goth or this, you know what I mean? And then I
Yeah.
met him and I'm like, he had short brown hair, white t-shirt,
Mhm.
jeans. And so that was intriguing to me because everybody I knew was sort of superficial in a way. Like you had to look the part, you had to dress the part. And if you didn't know like every band in the genre, you were a poser and, that kind
Mm.
of thing.
Yeah.
And so to meet someone that was making this music that was really deep and I mean, it blew me away,
Yeah.
was cool to me because I'm like, here's somebody who's just legit themselves. They don't have to like put on a front, that
Yeah.
was appealing to me.
Yeah. And I appreciate that more than so there's this group of let's call them synthwave artists who they individually call themselves goths, but they don't necessarily make goth music, and they have this propensity to I think almost subconsciously, because they're trying to get a wider audience for their music and trying not to be pushed out of goth culture or any specific like underground thing, that they kind of go around talking about how, well, goth is just whatever, and like anyone can be goth, and like they go to the other extreme,
Right.
and it's like, well, you can, it doesn't matter, you can do whatever the hell you want, and if you want to
Sure.
say you're goth, and my music is goth just because, and I think part of it is trying to like reach a wider audience for their music, and just, I don't know, it just turns into this, it's anything is anything, and there's no meaning to any of it.
Which is also not true. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you I'm a surgeon, but unless I frickin' went and, did the schooling, I'm not a surgeon. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't define things because like, I
Mhm.
don't, if I want to listen to Bauhaus all day today
Mhm.
and wear my crystals and black clothes and, whatever, cool. But tomorrow you might see me wearing, a gray t-shirt and shorts. I don't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't call yourself anything, then you don't have to live by. But I also get why people like the comfort of knowing who they are.
Yeah.
I guess too.
So what, I mean, what's that interaction like between your art, but music, writing, and that kind of thing, and your personal identity? Because it seems, from what you're saying, it seems like they inform one another, I guess.
Yeah, it's not as bad now as it was in the 90s because back then it seemed very much like a club that you had to be in.
Mm.
And I kind of feel like now people are a little less strict on that. And I think having age kind of gives you a certain level of, okay, well, you've been around a while, so we're not going to like judge you as harshly as we do
Yeah.
somebody else,
Yeah.
So there's at least that. But like back in the day, like we would go play clubs and it was so cliquish and we don't we're like super down to earth people. Like there's nothing elitist about us at all.
Yeah.
And I actually hate that mindset. Like snobs put me off more than just about anything.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was just very like we used to be really angry about being thrown in the goth club because it was so elitist and so like, honestly, at the time, it was very cartoonish. Like, people outside of the scene did not take that scene seriously at all. You know that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know how many times people have told us, yeah, I didn't even listen to Lycia back in the day because I thought you were a dumb goth band.
Huh.
So it was aggravating to us because people put you in the same club as like coffins and spider webs in this, and you're writing music about the essence of time and space and you know stuff like that, and it's like it's not the same. Like I get that we're all under the umbrella, like I totally get that, but there's definitely a difference between, you know, something kitschy and versus something like Dead Can Dance, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And I guess for me those two things were always kind of just parts of myself, because I do love the really, you know, pastiche of the silly gothic castle and costumes and things, and then I really like to explore, you know, the deep philosophy behind existence and you know, the existentialism and all that stuff. The elitist thing, like I totally agree with you. I do think that's a problem. And I think in the 90s especially, there was this sentiment of the kind of second and third wave goth bands that, okay, we had the 80s and we had the Sisters and we had Susie and everyone, and that was great, but it wasn't dark enough and it wasn't goth enough. And there really was this hyping up of the more cartoonish looking from the outside, the kind of we are taking ourselves super seriously and that kind of thing.
And that's when you really first started hearing the term goth.
Exactly, because prior to that, that did not exist.
Yeah.
It was just like you listened to alternative music. I mean, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, those were on big major labels. They weren't on little labels. They were on regular radio,
they were
MTV. You know, you weren't listening to some rinky-dink little band on a little tiny label somewhere. So
it was funny. I was just watching a live stream earlier today, a YouTuber called Skullgirdle.
I know her. I follow her too.
Yeah, she's great.
She's a hoot, yeah.
She was talking about how she loves telling baby bats how she used to listen to The Cure and Susie on the radio, and it's just watching their brains explode because they don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and like, you know, MTV actually played videos. So you could watch Bauhaus on frickin' MTV. That would never happen now, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know if you have more stories about the elitist thing. I kind of, as far as in a club setting, I kind of get it from both angles, because on the one, like, to defend it from the one end, like I don't think there's any defense for people being an asshole.
Right.
But
totally.
As far as goth clubs go, generally they're kind of seen as like a safe space to get away from everything, and that there is this kind of defensiveness of, are you going to support this, you know, me feeling safe here or not, and just kind of clothing is part of that. But also I will hang out and have a beer with anybody, and I don't think there's any excuse for dismissing someone out of hand just because you don't like how they look and missing out on like meaningful interactions with people. I have a big problem with that, and I think that's pernicious.
Well, some of it was, you know, we'd show up at a club, we'd be there, and then like the local scene kids would be there, and they would get in early because they knew the people putting on the event or whatever, and it would be like this taking over. We're on tour doing going from show to show to show, and these scene kids would like take over the backstage, and we would be pushed off to the side in the corner, and like we're so like whatever about stuff. In retrospect, we should have been like, get out. You know what I mean? Like, we need our private time. We're trying to eat and like get our head together before our set, but we're not that kind of. We're just not like that. So it was this
You're not going to pull a Peter Murphy and yell at the security guard for having a sandwich?
No. I probably would have made the guy a sandwich. That's dead. That's absolute fact. But so it was this weird thing of like, we're there to play a show, but they kind of didn't want us there at the same time. Like, it was very odd. And then I have a really great story about this. And this was before I was even in the band. Mike went he did the Start Corner tour. Well, back in that day, everything was snail mail, and he used to get handwritten letters from people, and he answered every single letter he ever got. Sometimes he would send out cassettes and, this, that, and the other. Well, there was a girl that he was writing to a lot, and she's like, I'm going to be at your in-store, blah, blah, blah. So he's at this in-store, and this other guy's hanging out with him who's like mega goth, and you'd probably know his name if I told you, but I'm not going to tell you. Okay. This guy was like mega goth, right? And here's Mike sitting there with his white plain white t-shirt and jeans, and they're sitting at this table. And so this girl comes up and she's like talking to the other guy, and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're finally meeting. I brought you these vintage postcards, and she was like gushing and this and that. And the guy's like, I'm sorry, but this is Mike. She literally dropped the cards down, turned away, and never spoke to him again.
Oh my God.
And so like, this is kind of, in retrospect, I'm like, maybe she was mortified, but like, that's the kind of like things that we experienced. I mean, I can remember so many times playing these uber cool goth clubs, and we always would start our music before we went on stage because we had a long intro, and we would just stand out in the crowd. And then I remember a particular, I think it was Columbus. We were standing in a crowd and people are just kind of looking at you like, who the hell are you? Like, you don't fit here, whatever. Wow. And then we walked on stage and you could physically see some people's faces go, oops.
That's
just stupid shit like that. It's just dumb. You know what I mean?
That's so weird. That's just so, I mean, it's abhorrent really, but I mean, it's not. So I guess today then, I don't know how much interaction you have with goths or clubs or anything like that. Do you feel like that's changed? Because from my perspective, as far as, okay.
100%. Yeah. I think it's really cool, actually. I think the scene's way healthier now than it was back in the 90s. There was a definite elitist vibe. I mean, and even with bands in the scene, I mean, I'm sure there's still probably competition between bands in the scene, but it seems a lot more support. Like, it sucks that we're too old to go tour now because there's all these young bands that we would have fit with so well. And they're all, we get shows offered all the time, but we're past that. We're not going to do that anymore. But it just sucks because the live scene is so healthy. You could literally go to any country in the world and get tons of shows. And we didn't have that opportunity back in the day. You had a handful of places you could play, and touring Europe wasn't easy, and now it just seems like, my God, you could just tour year round. We used to have to, after our tour stopped, we'd go get a job in a factory, work in the factory until it was time to go tour again. Now you could just bang, 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 keep going and going and going. Like Drab Majesty, I don't think they ever stopped touring.
Yeah, I saw them, a few months ago, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because we were talking like there's kind of like a wave of, I guess, post-punk type bands that don't look like vampires or anything.
But I love that though, because this really deep, awesome music is coming out of, again, like normal looking people. And to me, I find that more intriguing than someone who's always about the costume.
Yeah.
Style over substance, because there was a lot of that back in the 90s too. There were a lot of bands that was completely style over substance, and so that was another reason why it was like, please don't lump us in with that,
Yeah, and I think if you can have both, that's great. But
for sure,
it is.
You? That's my thing. Like Drab Majesty, they've got great music, but they've got this cool vibe. The way they look is cool too. It's
like a genderless space alien.
Exactly. Like, and I think that's super cool. But then like, Soft Kill, we're friends with them guys. And I know Tobias posted a post the other day talking about how somebody said to him, what's going on with you guys? You don't even look goth anymore. Like, I would buy your t-shirts, but they're not even goth and this and that. And I'm like, this is literally what we went through in the 90s. Your music's cool, but you don't have, and the thing of it is, like, I was fairly visual. Like, I had a quote unquote look, but it wasn't like, you know, some days I'd go on stage with a hoodie and track pants on, and then the next day I'd have a gown that literally Jarbo gave to me. So it was like whatever I felt like that day. It wasn't like a uniformed kind of thing for me. So to me, it's super cool that these people are just doing their thing. They're making their music, and if however they look is however they look. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you still, to some degree, dress alternative in some ways. And, you know, as an adult who, you know, you have to, you know, I have a 5-year-old. I don't know.
Yeah.
I get this kind of pressure from like other parents at school and things like, why do you still look like that? Or you can't be a serious adult and kind of thing, that kind of thing. Do you still deal with that now? I don't dress super goth, so no, but I mean, I've always generally got black on, and up until recently I had black hair for a long time, and then I had like really red hair for a while, and you know, the lipstick and everything, but I mean, I haven't been like super visual in a long time, but you can tell, like, if you knew, you'd know. You look at me and go, okay, she listens to different music, like whatever. Yeah. And there have definitely been times where, you know, you get that sort of side eye from the parents kind of thing. But I've been dealing with that since 1984 or whatever. So it's like, fuck. Like, I really don't give a fuck. I know I'm a good person. I know my kid's well taken care of. We have a very stable and like regimented house. We don't let him get away with stupid crap. I mean, he's 6, so you know what I mean. Yeah. People are going to think what people are going to think. And, you know, we're always going to be one of these kids is doing his own thing, people. So yeah, I was talking with my wife about that yesterday, actually, and her concern, because he's going to be starting kindergarten in a couple of months. She was really concerned that, you know, I don't want him to suffer because we look weird. Yeah. You know, but I mean, that kind of thing does happen, whether it's any kind of bigotry, like kids are going to suffer because of their parents, you know, racism or classism or whatever it is.
Sure. And it's kind of one of those things where you have to, like, if you teach your kid to be cool with who he is, then I think they're more apt to be like, whatever, that's my mom and dad. If you don't like it, fuck off. Like, I mean, I don't want my 6-year-old saying that, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just mom and dad.
my son is going to get in so much trouble for swearing because I do not care. I try to tell him, you know, so there's certain places where you have to follow rules, but he's also 5. So it's
exactly.
I mean, if I laugh when he says fuck ass, like it's funny. Like I don't care.
I try really, like I have the mouth of a sailor usually. And I don't do that around him because I mean, it is a thing of disrespect. Like, you don't want him to go to school and tell him get upset about something and tell the teacher to go fuck herself. Like, I don't want that on me because that would be on me. However, in the house and stuff, I'm like, if we joke around and call somebody a dick and we laugh about it, it's a thing of respect. If you're doing it joking, fine. If you're calling me a dick and you're pissed off, that's a whole other topic of discussion. You know what I mean? But like, I'm not like anal retentive about that kind of stuff either. We make jokes that are probably to some people would be like, you know, like we joke about balls and pee-pee. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. He's going to learn it anyways. And it's not like we're talking about graphic stuff. It's like making a joke about balls. You know?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I feel like that's going to eventually make you the cool parents where all the kids want to hang out at your house because they can swear.
That's my goal. That's my goal because balls. I would rather them be at... Yeah, you guys can make all the jokes about balls you want, but I'd rather have them be at my house so that I know what's going on. I don't want to have to kill somebody. That's all I'm saying. If I don't know what's going on and I find out something bad happens, you'll read about me in the papers.
So, so what's it like for you then, as far as, because this is something I've been struggling with recently, as far as trying to socialize? Because I mean, being an adult, it's always more difficult to socialize anyway. But being part of something like Goth or whatever, you have that built-in community.
Yeah.
And but it is more difficult to do any of that when you have a kid and when you have a job and that kind of thing. How's that transition kind of been?
Well, as I'm sure that you've probably heard, Lycia, you probably might recognize the fact that we're probably not super outgoing, hanging out in public people anyway. Yeah. But I mean, we've kind of been to our insular little selves for a long time anyway. And so it's weird now because when we do go hang out, it's with someone's parents because Dirk has a play date with somebody or we're at karate class or, you know what I mean? So it's awkward doing that for the thing like what you were just saying. Like we don't fit in with, people who have quote unquote normal interests, especially like there's a whole, and I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but like we definitely have two Americas going right now. And we definitely don't fit in with one of those sides. Mm-hmm. And so it's been awkward at times, I think. But we're not super social people. Like we went to see Drab Majesty about a year ago. My friend Stephanie came in from Fort Worth. And we went to go see Drab Majesty. I swear to God, it took me 3 days to recover from that. Like I was so like my body hurt from standing for like 3 or 4 hours or whatever it was. And, just the whole rigmarole of it, of finding a babysitter and, the whole thing was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like as much as I love bands, and it seems like every time I'm like, okay, Soft Kill's in town, we're going to go see them. And then the day of, something always happens. Mm-hmm. Somebody's sick or someone's always sick. Let's just leave it at that. That's always, somebody's always sick. And so it's like, I'm not telling anybody anymore that I'm going to see their band because then I just look like a giant asshole. Like, it's hard to get up.
You can't plan anymore.
You can't.
It's awful.
And we work, like Mike and I both get up anywhere from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning to start working. And so I mean, he's already in bed. He's been in bed for 30 minutes now. So, you know what I mean? Like, we'll just watch your YouTube video. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll watch you on YouTube. And I'm really great at socializing online. But as far as, and, just the whole aging thing. And like, we've both got health stuff. And so it's like,
I'm right at that place where in my head, I still want to be go out till 6 a.m., party, drink. And then we went to the 30th anniversary of Nocturna. And so, but we have a lot of things going on, right? So we got to find a babysitter. Mm-hmm. My wife, I don't work in the morning, but she gets up at like 5:30. Yeah. She's got, we both have anxiety issues, but she's also got other health issues. Like, so we go out and it's kind of fun and kind of awkward and you can't really talk to people because the music's so loud. And then we leave. We got there on time. We left about 3 hours later. And then I had people messaging me at 3 a.m. like, hey, where are you? We just got here. We're ready to party. And I'm like, I'm asleep already. So
exactly. Like you just woke me up, jerk. But see, and that's, Mike found out he was type 1 diabetic like decades ago now. So his whole, him being able to party has been an irrelevant thing for 20 some years. I never was a partier. So like, I've never even drank. I've tasted beer like 3 times. Like, it's just not my thing. It's so I never was into that aspect of it. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be so fun to go out and like see a show and like hang out and stuff. And I'm like, who am I fucking kidding? It makes me a nervous. Like, I literally start getting physically ill 2 days beforehand. And and it's so dumb because logically I'm like, there's no reason to be anxious about this at all. But you can't tell your body that, you know what I mean? Yeah, so
I have to start stealing my wife's Klonopin and Xanax like beforehand. But I think now at this point we try to do when we can have people over for just like a chill. People we're comfortable with just for a chill. I could do that. Or like meet somebody for coffee for like a little bit
And see, everybody I know is socially awkward too, or like they have anxiety. So it's like, like I really want to see you, but both of us are like, so stupid.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like like I said, like back in the day, like you're touring and you're just like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You're here one day, there the next. Was no big deal. Like, oh, we're flying to Mexico next week. Big deal. This and that. Now I'm like, oh my God, today I have to go to a store I've never been to before.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. How does the drive-thru work at that restaurant? I don't know. I've never been through it before. So dumb.
Oh my God, that's so relatable.
That's definitely relatable.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into some music questions here.
Sure.
I want to talk about some of that. Mark, do you want to kick it off and I'll jump in?
Yeah, well, let me just get the fanboy out of me.
Oh my God.
Right now. I love you so much. You're my favorite band ever, and etc. Okay.
That's super sweet of you.
Yeah. Well, I guess a good first question would be to tell us a little bit about the new album.
Okay, I can tell you very little about it because let me tell you, I've only heard it one time through once.
Ooh.
Yeah, Mike has been, I mean, we joke and call it this, I'm the studio widow, a term I got from a friend of mine. Because when he's in there, and it's hard now that we have a kid because he doesn't sacrifice dad time for that. So it's like these albums, like he always says he should probably get some sort of an award for being able to even record in like 15-minute segments that stretch out over like 8 months. Like it's ridiculous. But it's called In Flickers, and we don't have a street date yet, but it will be sometime this fall on Project. So we're back to Project, which is interesting.
Interesting.
And it's kind of all over the place. You've got some stuff that sort of sounds coldish, and then there's some stuff that sounds like bleak a little bit. It's kind of, if the last album kind of has the same vibe where it sounds like Lycia, but it's almost a different vein
it almost kind
of
of
Lycia.
Sounds like a compilation of sorts, like
in a
lots
way,
of different elements.
In a way, but it all fits. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like disjointed or anything, but it's definitely like in the last 3 albums have kind of had that vibe to it, where it's a little bit all over the place, but makes sense thematically. So I don't know. Mike wants to take a really long break because it's been nonstop music business for quite a few years now. So he's like really excited to get it wrapped up so he can just sit on the couch and do nothing for a while. But yeah, I can't wait for people to hear it for sure because it's different but the same, and it sounds like Lycia. It doesn't sound like something crazy or anything, but it's definitely different.
Yeah. How long does it take to produce an album? I know Mike is like really meticulous.
Yeah.
And like getting it, perfect. This takes what, like a year maybe, or
he's probably been doing this one for Quiet Moments took him like 6 years because he started and then quit, and then life gets in the way, and that one took a really long time. But the last 2 I'd say about a year. And because he's working with other people too, so you have to wait on them to do their parts, and we're not in the same room with each other, so he can't stand over us with a bullwhip and like he used to. Just kidding. But it used to when we recorded Cold and we all lived in the same house, it was easy. Mike would knock on the door, time to work on the music. But so, and like he has to steal moments here and there. Like I said, like on the weekends it'll be like, okay, I'll take Dirk to the store, we'll run around for a couple hours. So he'll get 2 hours of quiet work time. I mean, there's always dogs barking in the background, and like it's hilarious. Like if you listen real closely, you can hear ankles cracking,
I was about to ask.
meowing, all kinds of goodies. He's gotten really good at editing that stuff out. But
oh my God.
Yeah, he's always like, I don't even know how I get anything accomplished because between, Dirk running in, look at my Star Wars thing, or, dogs and yeah. But it takes I'd say about a year.
Yeah, and I know a lot of artists nowadays tend to produce everything like in their bedrooms. Is Lycia kind of still more of in a recording studio setting,
Never.
or is it never?
Mike has never recorded in a studio. He's always recorded on very minimal setup. People would laugh at our studio. Like literally, our studio right now is a Dell that we bought in, I want to say 2001.
Oh wow.
And it's sitting on my old aquarium stand. So it's this computer, he's got a mixer, and then the same old keyboards we've had since one of those keyboards he's had since the 80s, and it was a toy keyboard then. And so I mean he makes use of minimal equipment, and he's added some pedals and things like that, but yeah, I mean we've never had.
I was gonna say the sound is like so huge and vast and expansive. I think it's funny that it's such a minimal recording setting because it's just I don't want to sound braggy because I'm in the band, but it's his thing. I'm just like an extra instrument that he uses once in a while. But I mean I'm always amazed. Like I look at him, I see him every day, and I'm like, how did that come out of you? It literally blows my mind sometimes because, I just see him around the house and whatever. But yeah, it's, he does a lot with very little. Yeah. Well, I know we kind of touched on this earlier. Do you miss performing live? And I think you already answered, we're probably not going to be able to see a live Lycia show in the future, but do you miss it?
It's been like one of those torturous things for us because we did that for quite a while. And so it was just a part of the game. Like that's part of, not the game, but that's part of your job. Like you record an album, you tour. You record an album, you tour. And so we had to stop doing that when he got sick. And then we had to get jobs because at that time you could not get health insurance any other way with pre-existing condition. And so we had to get jobs for health insurance. Well, then once you have a job, you can't quit. Like you can't leave and go tour and this and that and the other. And so we got away from touring. And then there was a long period of time that Lycia was dead. We did nothing. We didn't record. We didn't do anything. And that's a whole nother convoluted story. And then when we came back to doing music again, it just really wasn't something that we wanted really to do. But yes, we still get these opportunities like all the time. Like, we'll get an email from somebody, from Italy and say, we want you to come over here. And like the old you is like, oh my God, I want to do that. But then when you think about, we both have full-time jobs. We have a 6-year-old. He has type 1 diabetes. Yeah. Where do you find the time to put a set together?
Yeah.
And then 98% of the time you've put this set together, then you go do the show and it all falls apart because the sound man doesn't know what he's doing or the equipment sucks that they have. I mean, it's so it's like you've sacrificed all this time. Cause that's what happened to us. We did a show in Scottsdale, Arizona. I think it was 2011, and we worked for like 4 months and we had this set about as close to perfect as we could get it. Then we showed up and literally the feedback was so bad on Mike's vocals that he had to scrap singing.
Wow.
And so it became this weird instrumental set with me singing once in a while. And so like all these months of like work for this, and then you're excited to show up, and people flew to this thing. There was someone that flew from like Georgia or something to see the show, and then that's what we give them. And so it never goes like we want it to go. It's better to go out, let people have good memories than, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the boxer that keeps boxing a little too long. You know what I mean? Like, you should have called it quits a couple fights ago. I don't know. But yes, we still, we have no intentions of ever playing any shows again, but when you get these offers and then there's like bands that you really like and they're like, hey, we should do a show together, and you're like, why can't it be 1996, you know? You guys were babies then, but, you know, it would have been cool.
I saw a similar thing happen I went to see Zanias at a place in Chicago, and she's from Germany, and a couple bands played before her, and then for whatever reason, they sounded fine, and then when she got on stage, she had feedback through almost the entire show, and it was just absolutely awkward and painful.
Yes.
And I was like, what is going on? It was such a terrible
That
tragedy.
used to happen to us a ton because Mike's guitars had so much effects on them that people didn't understand. It's probably not as bad now as it was back then, because maybe people probably use more effects now than they did then. I don't know. But they couldn't figure out our effects for the room. And there's something about Mike's voice that triggers feedback. And so that's why he quit singing live, because it was just, every time he got close to a microphone, it just started feeding back. And that's why I took over doing vocals the last few tours that we did or whatever. But yeah, it was aggravating. And then, like, again, people are excited, you know, well, I mean, theoretically, people are excited to come see you. They might be, they might not be. And then you don't give them what you know you could give them. And I'm going to use another sports analogy. It's like the guy that's the home run hitter and he gets up and he like strikes out, you know, like, damn it. I know I could have done better than that. I'm so sorry.
How dare you talk about sports on my Goth podcast?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, before we get too far off touring, do you have any crazy tour stories from back in the day that you want to pull out?
I'll tell the Marilyn Manson story. I've heard this before.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. I think I heard a little about Peter Steele, but
yeah, there was funny typo stories too. But so the Marilyn Manson story. So the last time we played in San Francisco, Smashing Pumpkins and Marilyn Manson showed up, and like, we're like, okay, whatever, because we were getting ready to go on stage. Like, we were on stage, and the stage was like only about maybe 2 feet off the ground, so people were standing right there. They come up, and Twiggy Ramirez walks straight to me and says, we want to go on stage now. And I'm like, what? And they're like, we want to play. And I'm like, you're gonna have to talk to Mike, like, whatever. And so he says to Mike, he goes, well, who's playing? And it's like, well, I see, like, you're literally talking, like, you had to know, like, who, I don't know. But so Mike's like, Lycia. And he's like, well, we want to play. And he's like, right now? And they're like, yeah. And he goes,
amazing.
Did you bring equipment? And they go, no. And then Mike goes, well, I guess you're not playing then. Because in his brain, first of all, it was so confusing and like discombobulating. Like, all of a sudden there's Marilyn Manson and Smashing Pumpkins asking to take the stage, which was just like, what? Like, it's not even computing in my brain as I'm talking to them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then in Mike's head, he's like, we can't afford, if they decide to smash our keyboard, we can't afford to replace a keyboard or a guitar that they just willy-nilly throw down and wreck. You know? Like, we don't have sponsors. We don't have, you know, whatever. So it was just this whole weird thing. Like, what the fuck just happened? Like, and then afterwards, like, they were kind of hanging around for a little bit or whatever. We didn't talk to him anymore because we were just like, I don't even know what the hell just happened. And then, funny story to tie it back to Typo Negative. So after we did that tour with Typo Negative, the next time they came to Cleveland, they had given us passes and whatever, like backstage passes and VIP and blah, blah, blah. So we get there and Marilyn Manson's there. And his security will not allow us to get anywhere near our friends that invited us to their show. It was like, what the hell? Like, I can't get rid of this guy. Like, what year was this? Weird. It had to have been 97.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
It was just weird. Like, the whole thing with, like, and he might be a nice guy. I don't know. I don't know any. Billy
Corgan is not. I can tell you that. That guy's
Yeah, he
I don't know if you've seen him. He's going off the deep end.
Yeah, isn't he like a really right wing,
he's like an Alex Jones person?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
He had a really smug look on his face the whole time. Like, who are you? Like, well, who are you? You're the one trying to get our stage. Like, why don't you go play some stadium somewhere and leave us alone?
Yeah.
Very weird. Just a weird thing to happen. But it's a funny story now.
Yeah. Only took 20 years.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Peter Steele. How did that come about? Like collaborating with Typo Negative.
So unbeknownst to us, like he was, buying Project records, and at some point, Project was like, "This guy Peter Steele is like into your band." And we're like, "Okay," and we didn't really know anything about them, and then when I thought more about it, I'm like, "Oh, I saw them. They opened for the Exploited when I saw them in like 1991 or something like that," and remembered it from that, and all I remembered is they were all really tall. Like that was the thing that I remember. They were all really tall, and so it was like, oh, that's cool, And so Mike kind of got in contact with him, and then we were gonna do a tour with them after the Burning Circle came out, and that ended up falling through. And then when we relocated to Ohio, they were playing some festival up in Toledo, and they're like, "Do you want to come up and play a show up here?" So we're like, "Sure." We got up there. We ended up not doing the show, which it was the first show we ever canceled because it was not going to go well for us. It was like a pure metal festival, and it was me and Mike and Dave. Like it would have not, there was no like stage monitors because everybody had their amps, and it was going to be nuts. So we ended up backing out of that show. But Mike and Peter continued to talk to each other fairly regularly, and they were going to actually do a project together, which would have been awesome.
Amazing.
But it never happened. And so we kind of stayed in contact with him. Well, we did that fall Halloween festival with them. Tour, which was crazy. Yes, we did get treated very poorly by their fans, but you know what? It was cool because it was like, okay, well, we earned our stripes this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was rough. Yeah. And so then we sort of stayed in vague contact after that, and he would every once in a while just call and talk to Mike. And so at the height of MySpace, I want to say it was like 2004-ish, I started talking to Josh on MySpace. And he asked me if I wanted to do some vocals for him on a song, and I did. And then that track never came out for anything. It was for some comp that just never happened. And they were starting to record Dead Again around that time. Was that? I don't know when that was. 2006-ish, maybe?
I think it was 08 or 09.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. I lose track of time. I'm old now. But so he was like, "Hey, do you want to do vocals on this song?" I'm like, yeah. And that's how that happened. And I never went in the studio with him. It was all, we transferred files via AIM.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's hilarious.
What was the compression like on that?
I have no idea.
Messenger. Jesus.
I have no idea. But it was funny because everyone's like, "What was it like being in the studio?" I'm like, "No idea. I never was in the studio with them. I probably would have been terrified."
Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool guys.
You released I think it was 2 solo albums, like maybe early 2000s, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about those. Was that just kind of something you wanted to do for a while, or?
Yeah, like I joked about it earlier. I bet I'm just another instrument that gets used in Lycia. Obviously Lycia is my band, but I always know that Mike uses me when it's appropriate to the song. So what I would do on my own is not like what I would do with Lycia. Completely different. He's very structured and mathematical and geometric and stuff, and then I'm so like not. So it's always interesting trying to work in a framework like that. I guess it's Like I'm more like free form poetry or something. I don't know. But at that time, I just wanted to do something that was more free form and not Lycia, I guess. Like because we weren't really doing a whole ton at that time either. And I just kind of wanted to play around. I had lyrics that I had written and just wanted to play around and see what happened. And the first solo album, actually, he worked with me a lot on. He helped a lot with the electronics and stuff, and he did a lot on it. The second album was pretty much all me. He did master it and stuff for me, but it was more just like screwing around, kind of like, okay, I literally would pick up a handful of silverware and throw it down, or like go back to my elementary school years and take a bowl of butter and put rice in it and shake it and like stupid crap like that. And just played around with it because I don't get to do that in Lycia. Everything's really structured and musical in Lycia. So it's just kind of like, I guess, poetry music, sort of.
Yeah. Did you do live shows for your solo stuff?
I did one. I'm trying to think if there's another one. No, I did 3. What am I talking about? I did the Cornerstone Festival, which is like a huge Christian festival, and that was a funny experience. I did that, and then I did a show in Cleveland, and then when my one book came out, Lives of Ilya, we did a Ilya Fair in LA, and Monica Richards was there, Eva O, Jarboe, and Sarah, what's her name? I can't, my brain's going blank right now. But it was a really cool night with a bunch of chicks, and those were the only 3 shows I did.
Kind of getting back to just like the music itself of Lycia, one thing I've noticed in like a lot of the songs, it makes like a lot of references to the weather and seasons and temperature. Songs like Snowdrop, which is probably my favorite Lycia song.
Cool.
Are these more like external observations like of the environment, or is it more of like a way of personifying internal feelings, or maybe a little bit of both?
It's probably a little bit of both. Mike is huge on the essence of time and place, kind of sinking into a place, the vibe of it, the feel of it, how it seeps into you and how it affects you, how it makes you feel and think. And even like time periods themselves have a specific vibe. Like if you think about the 70s, if you were alive in the 70s, it felt different than what it felt in the 80s and stuff. So it's always been sort of an area of interest for him, the essence of time and place, and trying to work through it on a personal level and explain it on a personal level. So
yeah,
a lot of his stuff is that, trying to explain the essence of time and place. You get this visual in your brain and you're just trying to explain it the best that you can. The funny thing about Snowdrop, though, is that I got the name of that song off of a stamp. At the time, back, we did snail mail back in the days, and we had these wildflower stamps. And I'm like, that's such a pretty name for a flower. And we were recording Cold at the time. That's where I got the name of that song.
Yeah, you recorded Cold. Did you say it was like Toledo or like Northern Ohio?
Northeast Ohio. It was sort of in between Cleveland, Akron, and Youngstown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like having lived in Ohio myself, I can definitely say that the weather there in winter is kind of nightmarish, or at least it was for me.
And this was a really cold winter. Like it was blizzardy a lot.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was Dave's first winter, and Mike's first winter back to the Midwest since he had left in the 70s. So it was like, we were all excited. We went and bought sleds, but it was so cold. It was really, really cold. It was a good winter. And our house itself was bleak though too, because we were not getting along at all. Like Dave was not getting along with us. We were not getting along with him. So it was like this, everything was cold. literally everything was cold. But to quote Lycia, but yeah, it was a really tense time, which is probably why that album came out so well in retrospect.
So is your primary your primary artistic outlet now your writing, or are you doing...
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I'll do some guest vocals here and there for people, but I have like no desire to record solo stuff anymore, at least at this time.
Well, obviously the model of music distribution has changed drastically over the past 18 years, I guess.
Definitely.
Is that something you're cool with, or do you kind of prefer the way it was? And are there maybe pros and cons to each?
I very much prefer how it is now. Back then, you were really beholden to your label. And so if they weren't doing what you wanted them to do, too bad. There was nothing you could do about it. Yes, it was kind of cool that you sold more CDs back then, that's for sure. Once people could download stuff for free, it ended our career, more or less. I mean, that was a big defining factor in people having to get jobs, and then you can't go on tour anymore, and then nobody remembers you, and you're gone. So that most definitely had an impact. But I like how it is now because, at least for us, if we want to do a CD, like we've been doing limited runs because then you don't have stock sitting around. And
right.
Because before it was like people were doing these massive, huge amounts of CDs, and they would just sit there because nobody was buying them anymore. But now it's like if you do a limited run, you can guarantee they're going to sell because people are like, well, I have to get one, or they're going to be gone for one. Yeah. And you're not expecting to sell 10,000 CDs anymore, so why are you printing 10,000 CDs? and like for us, if we feel like doing a CD like with a certain label, then we do it with that certain label, but we don't sign like long-term contracts with anybody. We do what we want to do. We retain all of our digital rights 100%. So like people don't own us anymore, I guess. Which is really nice. And like all the labels we've worked with have been amazing. It's been really good. And then we have all of our stuff available on Bandcamp for pay your own price.
Yeah.
And you can
which
take
is bananas.
Well, here's the thing though. Most people don't take stuff for free. We actually probably make more money giving it away than if we charged people, because I don't know what it is. It's like, I think it's like a mindset thing. Like, I don't want to pay 99 cents for that, but I'll give you 99 cents for it. Like, I don't know. Like, we've been super fortunate, and honestly, we put it there for free. If you want it for free, take it. You're allowed to have it. Like, with our blessing, you are allowed to have this. So, like, we do pretty decent on streaming revenue. And it's not our job like we're not trying to pay bills off of it anymore. So it, like the pressure is off for us. Back in the day, if you didn't sell enough records, that meant you went and worked in a factory. So there was pressure on it and stuff. Now it's like, well, we have our bills covered by our jobs. So music is like for passion and passion only now. And so if you're going to get it for free if you want it for free anyways. So, because there's plenty of places you can find it. Take it with our blessing, share it with your friends, like that's totally fine with us.
Do you feel like that the, I guess, internet model has balanced out now compared to previously when it was like, oh, I can get music for free, I'm never going to pay anything again?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And plus, because like YouTube holds people accountable. You can't just post somebody's song in a video. You have to I think that it's getting better. I don't know if financially it's fair.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and that's where we are right now. So, but I definitely think it's gotten better, for sure.
Well, it's also kind of similar with book publication, I think. I've heard recently on a different podcast, you mentioned like the whole stock issue. Yeah. I've heard that book publishers will also, if they have a first-time author and they don't sell enough books, they dump the author, and then they'll dump all the books on them because they don't want to pay for the warehouse space, and then the author has to like buy back, whatever 800 books or and try and sell them themselves and that kind of thing.
Well, that's how it was with CDs back in the day, because the label would be like, look, we're not making any money off this. Either buy them back off of us or we're like dumping them in the trash. Like literally. We've gotten those messages before.
Wow.
Buy your stock back or they're just going to go in the dumpster. And like, that's like, you're throwing my baby away, but it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a publisher. For the longest time, I was sending out letters and letters and letters and letters and letters to agents and publishers, and everybody wants a different type of form letter, and finally I was just like, you know what? I don't do this with my music. Like, I don't rely on playing the game with that. So if I'm doing this because I love doing it and I have no preconceived notions that I'm going to be making money like Stephen King, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen. And if it does, awesome. But, I may as well retain complete control over it. And I talk to a lot of people between self-publishing and using publishers, and like the benefit of having a publisher, unless you're a huge author, is minimal. Because you still have to do all the legwork anyway. Like, you still have to do all your promotion, and then they're getting the bulk of your money. So, okay, so it's kind of silly to me.
Yeah, and what I heard was the way that book publication works is they count pre-orders and then the first 2 weeks of sales, and that is how they determine if they keep you if you can write another book or not. And if you don't get enough pre-orders or sales in the first couple of weeks, then it's basically over for you.
And see, that's crazy. That's crazy because you're cutting somebody off before they've even had a chance to show you what they could do. So I'd rather take the indie route again, obviously if some person was like, hey, I want to offer you this big contract and take over and do this, and I might think about it, but it's not going to happen. So I may as well retain complete control of my stuff and do my own thing. Yeah.
And it's good. I like that attitude. I mean, it is. I think it's fair to be frustrated in general.
Yes.
Although on the other end, you have people like Wumpscut maybe it was a couple years ago, basically threw a fit and said he was never making music again because the internet killed the music industry and he can never make any money and people.
Well, then
I
have to ask how much his music meant to him in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, trust me, I understand the frustration of it. I completely do.
Yeah.
Especially like when you see, just for books, when you see something that you think is like you read it and like, God, this is not very good, but this is like a bestseller. And you're like, okay, it gets a little like, I feel weird about it. Like, if this makes me feel like
50 Shades of Grey, or
I mean,
which, by the way, your salacious YouTube readings are absolutely awful. Fantastic.
Yeah, but as soon as I get to the good part, I get embarrassed and shut off. Like, it's so stupid. But
that's what makes it so good, though.
But it's and I'm not, like, again, I am not a snob. I'm to each their own. If that's what you enjoy writing and reading. You do you, man. You do it, and you do it proud. But I'm like, how did that sell so much? It's like, it literally, I mean, okay, this sounds mean, but it's like 8th grade writing. Yeah. Like, it's really not very good.
And I might be wrong here, but I thought I heard that it was started
Twilight
as
fanfic.
Yeah,
Twilight
fan fiction.
which makes it cool in a weird way to me. Like, because,
Yeah.
I mean,
every fan fiction's writer's dream.
But it's like, like somebody like Stephanie Meyer, everybody likes to make fun of Twilight, whatever. I read the books because I am entertained by that kind of stuff. It's entertaining enough. Like, don't be like ragging on her because she was successful and you're not. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, people can do their thing. I don't know. I just don't care about stuff like. People get so hung up on, like, it's not cool enough or whatever, but yet they'll like something else that's equally as cheesy. I don't know. It makes no sense to me. Whatever. Do your own thing.
As a complete aside, I messaged Skullgirdle and mentioned that you thought she was a hoot.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my God.
What?
That's amazing.
She's funny. No, I love her videos because she's just real. Like, she reminds me of like me and my friends. You're just you, and if somebody wants to call you a goth, whatever, but you're not like anal retentive about it or whatever. That's cool.
Can you maybe give us a spoiler-free teaser of your latest book, like what you've been working on? As far as books go.
Or just your books in general.
Yeah, they're all basically connected. The ones that I'm getting ready to release, you don't necessarily have to have read the first 4, but the characters are all kind of, I guess it's kind of like how the Vampire Chronicles are, where certain characters show up repeatedly every so often. And I kind of like that because to me it's fun when they make an appearance, like, oh, there's so-and-so again. I'm weird, but it's, I don't know. Like, it's such a strange thing because technically I'm writing the story, but I really feel like these people are telling me what to do because it never goes like how I think it's probably supposed to go. But anyway,
those are the best stories though. It's like you have a character, and then those characters drive the story, and I think that's the best way to do it.
And they make really stupid decisions sometimes, but who hasn't? Violet, she's my main girl, and some of the stuff she does, I'm like, you're being so dumb. But anyway, yeah, they're all kind of related, and towards the end of the series, Black Owl and can't even remember the names of my own books, but they're more music related. Black Owl is 2 bands going on tour, but they end up connected to some of the other characters. And so that's kind of fun for me because I'm like, oh, I can go on tour through my characters. Their shows go a lot better than my shows went sometimes, but it's just kind of fun. It's an escapist thing. And the reason I started writing them to start with was I had this really detailed dream, and it was so detailed, and I'm standing there telling Mike, and he's like, yeah, okay. You know how it is when someone tells you their dream and doesn't make sense to them because it doesn't make sense to them because they weren't there.
Didn't experience it.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm just going to write this. I'm just going to sit down and start writing that. And literally 6 months later, the book was done. It went really fast.
Awesome. Wow.
It was, and I just love it. I love writing because I have complete control over it. Whereas with music, it's harder because you have to be, phonetically you have to make it work, and rhythmically you have to make it work. So you can't just free form flow, and I can with my solo stuff more, but so I'm used to having these constrictions where with writing, you really don't have to have constrictions. And I'm not a rule person. If I write something that's grammatically incorrect, but that's how the person talks, or makes more sense in the flow of the story, I'm totally cool with that. I'm sure my books are not 100% perfect grammar and punctuation. I mean, I try the best I can, but I write, I guess, kind of more for feel than... So if a sentence is exceptionally long, that probably somebody else might have broken that up, but it makes sense in the story to be that way, then I'm fine with it.
It gives it some flavor, gives it a unique feel from other stories.
Well, I kind of write like I talk in a way. So sometimes it's a little more colorful than other. I'm trying to paint a picture. I literally see this in my head, and I'm trying to convey a movie almost. So
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of, this is completely random, but speaking of vampires and Lycia, when I was at Nocturna, we walked in and they were playing a Christian death song. We got through the line, and then this other song came on, and I was just I was like, I've never heard this song before. I'm in love with it. I feel like I'm in a vampire club right now, and that's just perfect atmosphere. And I was like, what is it? And then a week after that, Scary Lady Sarah put the playlist up, and it was a Lycia song.
No way!
This is so great because I'm not as familiar with Lycia as Mark is.
Yeah.
But it was it's what was it? 9 Hours Later.
Okay, yeah, and I can see that.
Oh man, this is so good. And so I went and listened to a bunch of albums after that because I was like, oh,
that actually makes sense though. That would be in a vampire club.
It was
funny.
Perfect atmosphere for what was happening at the moment too.
Oh, that's nice to know she's still playing Lycia too.
If you can, so like I said, I mean, I'll have links to Lycia's Bandcamp and like Amazon where people can get your books and all that good stuff in the podcast app and on the website. Is there any specific place you want to send people to check out your stuff?
Mostly Bandcamp and Amazon. Project has some Lycia stuff there and coming out.
Cool.
Silber Media has some stuff still left over. But mainly, if you just look us up on Bandcamp, there's going to be probably links in there. And, follow us on Facebook. Follow Lycia page on Facebook. That's where you're going to get your information of upcoming releases and stuff like that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, again, thanks so much for coming on. This was a real treat. It was a pleasure to get to hang out.
Yeah, it was really fun because I don't often get to talk about the old days or like the old scene or anything. So it was a lot of fun for me. I really appreciate it.
And I really appreciate your perspective on that as far as not having an overly romanticized view of how everything was better back in the old days.
Yeah, because it wasn't. I mean, certain aspects of it were cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think about being that age and that, young and everything. It was awesome. But it wasn't like what people presented as at all, I don't think, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, for myself, I'm very much a live in the moment and enjoy what you have at the time. Because you can get too caught up in nostalgia and then not really appreciate what's going on around you.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's time to adapt and change and evolve.
Yeah. Next week, we will be back with Emilian from YouTube. We're going to be talking about why Instagram is destroying goth culture. I'll be chatting with him about the state of goth in England and why fashion used to be meaningful in goth culture and is no longer, and a whole lot more. Album reviews, sinister suggestions, a lot of good stuff. Don't forget, you can still get your Cemetery Confessions patch. You've got about 2 weeks to order before it's gone. Link will be in the description of the episode. You can also go to Etsy and look for Junkyard Bat, all one word. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, stay dark.
The preceding program is a member of The Belfry, a network of blogs, podcasts, and videos for the darkly inclined. Go to thebelfry.rip for more information.